All right. Well, it's a delight to welcome on Melissa Lozada-Oliva today, the author of the short story collection Beyond All Reasonable Doubt, Jesus is Alive, which comes out in September from Astra. I'll just read her bio real quick, and then you can introduce yourself in any way you might want to. Melissa Lozada-Oliva is a poet, novelist, and screenwriter. A child of Guatemalan and Colombian immigrants, she is the author of Peluda, Dreaming of You, and Candelaria. Melissa's work has appeared in Vulture, Harper's Bazaar, BBC Mundo, Audible, The Yale Review, NPR, and more. She lives and teaches in New York City. She only prays on planes.
Yeah.
So a nice touch. Fits in with this book there.
Yeah. What's up? My name is Melissa. Pretty much that's everything about me that you read. This is my third book and it's short stories.
So I wanted to ask you first,
Mhm.
kind of about form, because
Yeah.
you have written, like you said, I mean, poetry itself is an experiment in form, and then you've written a novel in verse, now a short story collection. So there are like three categories that people will try to fit you neatly into, right? She's a poet, short story writer, she's a novelist. On top of that, you said screenwriter on there as well. So what for you is the value in finding new ways to communicate on the page?
That's a great question. I think, I mean, with short stories, especially, I feel like everything, I'm like, how do I keep like restarting my sentences because maybe I need a form. And I think poetry showed me that like all writers need a box to put the goo of their brains into. And with poetry, those forms are like sonnets or villanelles, or like you make up a form. Or sometimes it's just like, goo on the page. But a short story has a form also. It can only be so many pages, it can only have so many scenes. And that containment, I think, was really useful for me, kind of parsing out complicated feelings that I was having. And yeah.
That's really interesting. I can see that. And obviously that sort of changes as you move from extremely short to, middle to long. You have like a novella in here.
uh,
Those sorts of like some of the shorter ones, you can definitely feel that almost the sense of the story is just in the tone. It's like the
right.
feeling. Another kind of formish question. You use second person a lot, which is something I guess I see in poetry a lot, but not always in short stories, and something I really enjoyed. Sometimes it sort of changes from, second person retelling of events to like a direct address in the first story. But like what specifically about the second person? Is it something you turn to automatically? Is it something, you're rewriting all of these and it just worked best?
Yeah. Okay, thanks for asking that question. I love talking about the second person. I teach a class on it. I think
Oh,
dream
wow.
Yeah. Dreaming of You, my novel in verse, was like a big meditation on second person and like how we put people we love on pedestals by like turning them into a you, and like once they're a you, they're kind of like this like third person, not to be like like they're talking in third person, but like they stop being like Betty, they're like you.
Mhm.
And that kind of like takes agency away from them. I think there's so many ways and reasons to write the you. Sometimes it's this like trauma response where you're talking to yourself, but you want to like separate yourself from the person that bad thing happened to. Sometimes it's to a loved one. Sometimes it's to someone who's deceased. Sometimes it's simply to just a person who's still living. And sometimes it's a prayer. And I think I wanted to explore how the you in these short stories works because they're talking to people who can't respond to them just yet. Much like the way, like when you're praying, God never responds to you. And so yeah, in like the first story, this young woman is talking to her friend, and confessing this like thing that happened. And then in the second story, this guy is like talking kind of resentfully to his girlfriend while telling a story to people around him. And I think it's helpful also. It's a good form, it's a good container for the brain goo to be like, okay, writing this is easier if you're like thinking of someone, if you have someone in mind. So, yeah.
No, that's a great way to think of it. That's kind of how I always think of it, is like it's the first person, but you're just kind of wanting to disassociate from it, but you use it in some really interesting ways. Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. So you mentioned the first story is, yes, talking to somebody who can't quite respond just yet. And it has the same title as the book.
Mhm.
I have been reading for a while now Joyce Carol Oates' new novel,
Yeah.
Fox, which is about a messed up teacher. And I've
Oh.
been like, yeah. And so I've been like, all right, I'm kind of like, I don't want to, read any more of this. And then I turn to this and I'm like, oh my God, here it is again.
More massive teacher.
Which was pretty funny. But I love that story. It takes the title of the book, like I said, which I'm really interested in. So the second clause is fascinating and makes it sometimes, sometimes I'll laugh when I'm reading this in a coffee shop or whatever, and I've got my Jesus
Jesus
is
is
Alive cover out there. But that first clause, beyond all reasonable doubt, does a lot of work
Mhm.
because your characters seem not very certain of anything.
Yeah.
If they are certain of things, they're certain that like touching too many receipts will make you go mad. Like,
Uh-huh.
things like that, conspiracy theories, I guess I should say. So what does that title mean to you, specifically that sort of beyond all reasonable doubt, and why was it appropriate either for the book as a whole or the first story, whatever yeah.
Thank you for asking that. Yeah, I think I just am really like in love with the phrase because it's so crazy. And the certainty is so wild to me to like really believe in something that hard. And I think it just like rolls off the tongue in a beautiful way for the wildness that it's proclaiming. um and yeah, I think the characters in these stories are trying to find certainty, and they're trying to find steady footing in a world that is unmooring them, and they're trying to find something to believe in. So I think that's what's going on. And then that's the billboard that the character sees in the first story.
Hmm.
And I think she's kind of trying to be like above. I think this person thinks that she is above proclamations like this. She's like ironic. She's educated, millennial, and yet she's doing something really dangerous and pretty stupid. And so it's like, who is really above this? Yeah.
That's a great point. Like being educated, but how you actually put it into use in the real world. And one thing I love about the stories like that is when we're reading them, it doesn't necessarily feel that way. We're kind of on her side, and then you have to take a step back and be like, okay,
What are
what the
you
heck
doing?
is going on? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So something I'm really interested in, and I kind of like hate saying this, but it's something that's always on my mind because I take, undergrad workshops and things where everybody's like, what's the point of this story? What's the big revelation here? What's this or that? And one of my favorite stories in this collection was Dream Man. It was the first one I read because I always read collections out of order.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Do you listen to albums out of order too?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think that might just be, my age. I don't know. But yeah, no, I do. I did read the novella last, which was probably my favorite thing in the whole book. So I'm glad that happened. But Dream Man, I really, really loved. And again, returning to this whole like, what is the point of a story? There were two lines that stuck with me. You have the funniest anxieties, I think. You're still a little in love with so many people,
Mhm.
and it felt like the whole story was just capturing like this sort of tone of nostalgia for something that like never existed, or sort of regret. And obviously it's two people from two completely different time periods who are somehow, well, they're not both interacting, but one is sort of interacting with the other. And
Mhm.
so how do you think about a piece that short, that inventive? What are you looking for it to do exactly before you say like this goes in the collection? Can it simply be capturing a tone? What is that exactly? Because I still don't know what I love so much about it. Yeah.
Thank you for liking it. I almost didn't include it because I was
Uh,
like, I started hating it and I was like, what the hell? And I started like hating the guy, the dream man. The
he's a
story is
little bit. He's a weirdo a little bit.
Berker. Yeah, so the story is about a man who is like the man everybody sees in their dreams, and he's like hired by
Yeah,
the CIA to investigate people's dreams, and in particular this like one woman who seems to be able to like predict the future. And I think that was just like that was the most poemy of the stories, where it kind of just came out of me, and then I kind of got really fixated on that, like, big um folk tale that there's a guy that everybody sees in their dreams with like a unibrow. And I was like, is this true? And I was like, what if it is? And how lonely would it be? Everyone knows him, but he is still like this stranger. And then I think it ended up fitting well in the collection, because it's the collection's about like women and their demons basically, and he's kind of this demon. He's but he's in love with this woman that he can't have, who is still just like this normal person, but still on the same wavelength of all of the other women in the stories. And yeah, I really was so close to cutting it, because I was like, I hate this. But I have heard from a lot of people that they like it, so I'm glad I didn't.
Well, I'm sorry I liked it if you
Oh no.
didn't, but
Okay, you know what? It's fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
It starts to get really creepy with that line. I forget what it was, where he's like, "I will die like when you are one," or something like that. It was just like, yeah, okay, yeah. But no,
Yeah.
no, I do really enjoy that.
I'm glad you-
Maybe we could read a little bit from that.
Sure. All right. I am the man who travels through dreams. You have seen me. I could even say that you know me. They did the study. They had the people draw me. I was there. The conspiracies were right. I was hired in the 1960s by the president. Technically, it's still the 60s right now, and I am traveling, getting information for something, but I cannot tell you what. They say everybody you've seen in your dreams you've seen in real life. The man sitting next to you in a dream car is a stranger you saw briefly at a deli. That is not true. I will never meet you. Not ever. You were in a video store. You were old enough to remember those, though I will not live long enough to see them in real life. You go to the children's section and stare at the Winnie the Pooh DVD. Then the walls fall down, the DVDs turn into little birds, and one of them is big enough to carry you away. You arrive in the city and it is raining. In the distance, you see a door in the middle of the street. I am in a coffee shop that you remember, sitting in a chair that you remember. You construct things in your dreams that you don't even know about, entire architectures, floor plans for me to walk through. I am watching through a glass window. You open the door and it shows you your mother eating a pizza with her hair up at a roller skating rink. Behind her, there are three men in suits, and they are talking over a box. You close the door. I write something down. Your child is drowning in a bathtub that's filled with Capri Sun. You try to save him, but each time you reach for him, he slips away from you like a fish. The juice gets higher and higher, but there's a window on the ceiling. You crawl through it and leave him behind and feel a sense of relief. And in this dream, you can admit this to yourself. You open the window and you are in college listening to a psychology professor. You are late. You sit down and your backpack is by your seat. Your future husband is next to you. He hands you a pencil. I am two rows behind you.
You're right. It is very poemy, especially with the sort of fragments.
Yeah.
Um, and again, it's like it is that sort of like the writing just gets you in a trance, and you don't really think about how strange everything is all the time
Yeah.
until you step back.
I take it back. I like this.
You don't have to. So Tales, which is a story about a woman who not grows a tail, she accepts it from her aunt, who's kind of scamming her step aunt, who's kind of scamming her into taking this tail, which is pretty hilarious. And I guess the thing that really interested me about that story was the diversity of characters. I guess in the way they talked, you have, okay, what was his name? Montgomery, who
Yeah.
tricks people into asking him how he is every day so he can say, I'm blessed.
Yes.
Um, you have Lucas, who kind of speaks, I don't know, like he'll say things like family is so random, exclamation point. And you're
Yeah.
like, okay, interesting. And then like you have even like side notes, the head chef just talks about how he wants to name his daughter after a brand of cookies.
Mhm.
Um, And I wonder how you envision this sort of dialogue because it's something that's really cool, I think, about a lot of your stories. Are you sort of expressing, is it maybe an inability to communicate with each other? Everybody's just kind of on a different wavelength. Is it you're just having fun and you just like writing crazy dialogue? Is it something about, the way we are now? And I don't know. So I just want to kind of open-ended. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Tales is my favorite story of this because it is, I had a lot of fun writing it and I wrote it in the pandemic and I just wanted to like make myself laugh. um,
Yeah.
and I also wanted to write a love story. And I think this is kind of the only explicit love story in the story. And I think Lucas, who says like family is so random, like he is, you know, struggling with trying to be nice to everybody, trying to find the right thing to say, and not really truly being himself. But around Liz, he can be himself, or he's starting to realize he can be himself. And I think it's fun seeing how people try on like different phrases that like sound fake in order to like communicate, in order to like get through a moment of social anxiety. Montgomery, I will say, I used to work at a hospital, and I was a food service worker at a hospital, and it was a very diverse crew of people working there, and I think it's one of my favorite jobs I've ever had. And I would go to every floor and I would serve food, and I had to wear this little outfit, and I had a lot of fun, and it was just like so ripe with story, and all of my coworkers were so funny. And one of them would say, he was Haitian, and he'd be like, "How are you, Melissa?" And I'd say, "Good, how are you?" And he'd say, "I'm blessed." And I thought it was so funny. And I just, so that is an ode to my lovely coworker. And I think this story is also an ode to coworkers and meeting people who love you at work. Um, and what it means to love them back, and the conversations you have with each other that you wouldn't talk to them maybe outside of this like strange place that you're trapped in. And but you are. And so those conversations arise. Yeah.
That's really sweet. I was kind of wondering because that's such a, I mean, not just like a strange job. Like I don't hear people working food service at hospitals and wearing the little collar that sometimes turns yellow, sometimes doesn't. Like it was just so it's interesting that that's autobiographical. I was wondering where that came from. Yeah, that's really cool. That is how it is, isn't it? Like that just ends up being the favorite one you worked at, even though it feels so random. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's.
I mean, I hated it when I was there. I was like, this sucks. I'm at a hospital. I was
Yeah.
like 18, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't want to be at a hospital on a Saturday morning. And now I'm like, that was so fun.
Yeah, yeah, that's very funny. Okay, this is super closely related,
Mhm.
but I feel like you characterize very swiftly, and in a place like Tales, I think it's pretty evident. So, like, the narrator says something like, I'm not a good person to make small talk with. I'm always saying stuff about prisons. Or we'll observe of her aunt, I think it was. She was the kind of person whose touch you felt on the backs of your ears, no matter where she touched you. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of like using humor or utilizing the senses to kind of make these like, single sentences stick with us. And I wonder if you could talk about how characters come to you exactly. I guess some of them are just based very clearly on a specific person, but it feels like you need very minimal space to diagnose the kind of person we're dealing with, and then you can kind of just move from there and look at purely interaction. Whereas like a lot of stories will spend a lot of time trying to make very like witty observations about a
Oh
specific
yeah.
character. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's yeah,
Yeah. I think I'm trying to slow down more as I write, because I really admire writers who are just like, they really like describe a person, um and then they like pull these metaphors that you didn't like think of. Like my friend Olivia Gatwood wrote a book called Whoever You Are Honey, and she describes like these girls with ballet, with like they're at ballet and their hair is pulled back, and she described them as having like pearl onion heads. And I thought that was so, like, I could see that so well. And I could see how she was like really thinking of like the movement of the onion. It was just like there was so much like meditation that came there. And I think I move really quickly in my stories, and I think I don't know, maybe that's just I'm just like, okay, let's keep going, you know. But I think I do want to have like one specific character trait attached to everybody. And I don't know. I think those things really are, it's like practice and instincts describing stuff, and things that like stick out to you. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I think it does. One way I noticed that, and actually the reason I noticed this is going to sound kind of funny, but this sort of longer senior thesis I'm working on kind of opens with somebody looking at a painting and having a very physical reaction to it, mainly like their palm is itching very hard.
Yeah,
And then you had a scene in the novella where there's this sort of, I believe it was a painting of
yeah,
a panther, and somebody just starts brushing the heck out of their teeth to
yeah,
the point that like their gums bleed. And I was like, oh my God, that's fascinating. Because I
yeah.
was like, what the heck? When you think you're really original and then you're like, oh well, no. But those sorts of sensory overload or maybe sort of like sensory confusions, I feel
Yeah.
like you do a great job with like sitting at those points. There's a lot
Mm,
of examples in that novella specifically. I mean, at one point, like the pillows are alive or something like that.
yeah.
But yeah, it all feels very real and true to experience. Does it feel that way to you? Because like that specific story, which had a lot of that, actually felt the most realist, maybe up until the very, very end.
Oh yeah, the community hall.
Yeah, yeah, Community Hall. Yeah, the novella.
Yeah. Um, I think with that, it's yeah. So I really like thinking about how fear and anxiety just like manifest in the body, and those are two emotions that are really closely linked and kind of the same. But we really try to ignore them to like move on with our day and our life, but they don't like to be ignored, and they manifest by like all of a sudden you're brushing your teeth so hard that your gums bleed, or you have like an itchy palm or something. Or, and I think that is just, that's like true for me, how I deal with fear. Like I don't notice I'm feeling something until my body is telling me. And I think, yeah, I think that's something that I try to honor. I want to honor how it manifests physically. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's exactly the thing that I find so interesting is kind of sitting in those moments where, those things are just coming right back at us that we've been pushing down.
Mm.
Um, in terms of the novella, I wonder a bit about what sort of commentary you envision that having, because there's so much, I should say, it's about a sort of famous musician or a famous one half of a duo that's become famous, and she has been canceled and is moving back to, I think she's from Boston. She's moving back to Boston, sort of into this community hall, if you will, kind of community housing and place that may or may not be haunted. There's obviously cancel culture. There's, people choosing certain pronouns for nefarious reasons. White people telling other races what they can or cannot say. It almost leads us to this diagnosis of society. And then at the end, we kind of are like, wait, maybe this girl is in the wrong. I don't know. It's kind of like there's a lot going on. I'm
Yeah.
wondering kind of how you envisioned that commentary because it feels like there's so much kind of packed into that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on there. And I think when I started, I really wanted to write a haunted house story. And I really wanted to write about this like affliction of the 2010s of cancellation. And I think maybe we're still afflicted with it, but maybe we've learned our lessons from it. And what it's like to live with a bunch of people and like be on top of each other. I think I'm interested to see how people interpret it. At its core, I think it's about somebody who is trying to be better and they don't know how to be better, because they haven't addressed a bunch of stuff going on in their life. I feel like I have more to say, but I guess the story, it's also like, yeah, I get haunted by the story itself. I was reading Haunting of Hill House. I tried to read Hill
Mm,
House like every Halloween, and I was reading it and I was like, oh my God, this is very like modern. I mean, it's a modern book. It's like less than 100 years old, but it is very modern for a bunch of strangers to live in a house together. And they're kind of like all outcasts. They don't have any ties to the real world. And then the main character, I'm forgetting her name, even though I read that book a bunch of times. She's like really trying to like run away, and that makes her like really vulnerable for a house that like wants her. I wanted to just like explore that in why would like a modern woman want to run away? Like, what is she running away from? Yeah, am I answering that question?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think it's a lot, and obviously you don't want to tell people how to interpret it. I
Yeah,
guess, I mean, my instinct, I guess, was to just ask you. That's probably not the
totally.
way to go, but yeah. Okay, so side note, and anybody who listens to me ramble about books will be able to vouch for me in the comments. But I just, was talking about how this Halloween I'm planning to do a Shirley Jackson marathon sort of
Yes,
video. So I don't know. That's
you're
you
on.
keep
We're
like
on the
what you keep yeah, like what's going on here? Um
yeah, she's the queen. Haunting of Hill House is a perfect book.
yeah, no, and I feel like a lot of times with those, that one's longer than
We've always lived in the castle.
yes, 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 yes. But I feel like we always lived in the castle is just like the most perfect length.
Yeah,
I often find that those like 130-page sort of like novella-ish types are just that's like the perfect format.
the 90-minute
But
movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. So do you mind reading Pool House,
Yeah.
the first two pages? Because I just love this opening, and then I have a couple more questions. I don't want to keep you for too long, but yeah, this has been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, this is so fun. I haven't really talked about this, so it's like it's fun to
I think real quick, you mentioned in the acknowledgments that this came out in 2020 on Audible, so it was
yeah.
only audio available.
Yeah, and it's like a lot different.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is not what the story is really. I mean, I think there's still like some of the same beats, but it ends really differently. Um, I think I was not I think I also, you know, this is a very like I wrote this in the pandemic. And so I was very like thinking of childhood entrapment,
Mhm.
and I was like back in this place of being like I can't go anywhere. And that made me like really think about like what I wanted this story to be. And I think yeah, I'll just read it. Okay. Pool House. My mom always had plenty to say about Patty, and her mother Helen did too. They would talk about Patty as my mom did Helen's nails. Patty had a drug problem. Patty dated a man who was telling her bad things. Patty adopted a cat, and then the cat ran away. Patty had bad energy. When I asked my mom what bad energy meant, she said, something that never leaves you if you aren't careful. I only ever saw Patty twice. It should have been four, but the third time she didn't show up. And the last, well, I still can't be sure that was her. The first time, I'll never forget it. She marched into the salon my mom worked in, two Starbucks lattes clutched in her hands. I was in the waiting chair, the symbols on the math homework in front of me dancing into one another. My mom's boss, a tall woman with shiny cheekbones, didn't like it when I was around. She felt it was distracting to the other clients. But it was a weekend, and my mom wanted to keep an eye on me. Here, Helen, Patty said, handing her the latte. Helen was Helen, not Mom. Patty, have you met Claudia's daughter? Patty turned around and smiled at me with her blocky white teeth. I could see a film of spit on them. She stretched out her hand. She had chipped purple paint on her nails, like she didn't care about that sort of thing. She smelled like flowers trying to overpower cigarettes, trying to overpower flowers. She had a pointy nose that on the wrong face would look pig like, but on her face looked angular, drawn on by God. She was wearing these jeans that showed off her pancake belly and shapely hips. My body was still pea shaped, blobby, sexless. I held on to her hand and felt a booger hanging between my nostril and lip. I couldn't get anything out of my mouth. My mom looked up from Helen's pudgy feet. Age spots prickled Helen's calves, spider veins wrapping up her thighs. Say hi, Helen said. Helen had thick silver hair that stopped at her neck. She's shy, my mom said. Patty retracted her hand. I'd missed my chance. That's okay. I hate talking to strangers too. See you later, Helen. Bye, Claudia's daughter. The bell jingled as she pushed through the door.
I can tell you have audiobook experience doing the different voices for the Or did you do the audiobook for this?
I'm gonna be doing the
Gonna
audiobook.
be doing it. Okay. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, okay. So I really, really loved that beginning. And this is perhaps an interesting story to talk about beginnings and endings because the beginning is so, so hooky. And I feel like you have that with a lot of stories where, I mean, either it'll be the first or last line in the first paragraph, and you're just like, okay, what the heck? Like I just want to speed, I need to figure out what's going on. And I really like that. And then endings tend to be more vague. I think this is almost capturing a specific ending. You said, what's it called? Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been? By Joyce Carol Oates, which is a fantastic story. Everybody should check that out. Yeah, I just, it's kind of a broad question, but using this story as a template, of course, if you want to just continue talking about the story, you can, because I'm very fascinated by it. But how you think about beginnings, how you think about endings, because they work really well and in interesting ways in this story specifically, but all through the collection.
Hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I think I that's really my like slam poetry background to have like a
Mm.
hookey beginning because if like you're not being paid attention to in like the first 10 seconds of your poem, you're gonna like lose the audience and then they're gonna, give you a bad score, which is a horrible way to think about art, but that's very ingrained in me to be let's hook you in. Let's gain your trust, and so I wanted to do that there. And then I think I just like love when stories, Tana French does this a lot. I've been reading a lot of her. I just have been really into mysteries lately. But like the thesis and like the answers of the mystery are always in the preface, like in these like beautiful descriptions. And then like you finish it and you go back and you're like, oh my God, it was like the blueprint was all there. And so I think I wrote this beginning a few times as the story changed, so that I could like make sure it had like the right blueprint. And then the audible ending ends very differently. I hate that there's like two versions out there, but maybe that's okay. And this ending, I was really thinking like, okay, I was deeply moved, inspired, terrified by Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been? By Joyce Carol Oates. What was the feeling that that left me with? Um, and how do I recreate it without like plagiarizing her? And so it's like an ode to that story. And I think this ending is like this girl is still like a little kid. She's not like she's like barely hit puberty. And I think it's like the drums have started and um the adult world and the cruelty and the evilness of it are being made known to her. And she kind of just realized she has to keep living, which isn't really how Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been ends. But I think that is what I realized in myself as I was reading it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, it's a little bit of a, I'm not that I don't enjoy Where You Going, Where Have You Been, but it's a bit more of a enjoyable ending than that one, exactly.
Yeah.
Side note, I feel like a lot of the best writers are slam poets, and maybe it's because of that sort of,
Yeah.
yeah, those rules, but yeah. Um, so on the topic of endings, Something Loving is incredible. I love that ending. I think we hear what we want to. I don't have a question about it besides what really happened, I guess, but we shouldn't spoil anything. So I want to ask you about Probesito. Am I saying that right?
Mhm.
Whose main character was one of my favorites because he seems strangely indifferent, which
Yeah.
again comes back to the sort of weapon I feel like that tone is for you because he's able to diagnose. this group of people who are sort of like publishing high literary society,
Yeah.
and it's like he's in tech, he's not, somewhere else, but his partner belongs to it, so he can like diagnose that group of people. He's diagnosing his partner. He seems caught in between. So much is happening around him, right? But nothing quite to him. Somebody even basically says that to him at
Yeah.
the very end,
Yeah.
which was a great line. So he's thinking about publishing, he's thinking about masculinity, late stage capitalism,
Hmm.
his possibly failing relationship. I'm wondering if that story, what it was like writing that story, does it feel representative of you as a writer? Because I feel like you're able to move between these spaces in a really interesting way. And does that, yeah, I was wondering how navigating these big class, areas of work, gender and race, language, whereas a lot of writers will box themselves into one thing or have like a clear bias towards writing a specific kind of story, specific
Hmm.
character. I don't know. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah,
Kind
it
of
does.
rambly, but
No, it makes sense. I think it strangely is very representative of me. I think I really like playing with voice, and I think that was something I really wanted to do with Pobrecito. And yeah, you're right. It's like this really indifferent guy who can be indifferent because he has all of these privileges in his life. And things just like happen to him, or they don't. He's just like there. They don't really ever, nothing really ever happens to him except for at the end. And yeah, there's this like supernatural element happening throughout. There's this like nostalgic childhood tale happening throughout. I love a story within a story. I think Ling Ma does that like the best.
yeah,
So like Office Hours does that really well. There's this, she has the novella in Bliss Montage does that like incredibly. And I love seeing how like I love like a little A plot, B plot, and seeing how they collide, seeing how they interact and explain one another. And this, yeah, I was kind of just resentfully writing this story. And then I started to be like, okay, two things, which is Julia Alvarez. I had the immense privilege of interviewing her once, and she said, if you're gonna write a villain, you have to write them with love, otherwise they're a cartoon. And so I was thinking about that because I have affection for this person, and my good friend Sophia Bromowitz, who's an incredible writer, watch out for her. She said once, like, if you're gonna bring someone into the world, why be cruel to them? You know? So I think about that when I write my characters, and definitely with Pobrecito, I thought of him as a pobrecito, as this poor guy. But also he's annoying as hell.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but in order to write a full person, you have to be kind to them. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I think that reminds me of one of the when I first started getting into reading and writing short stories, early college, late high school. It was, of course, George Saunders, and he had this whole spiel about how, he'll start a story by sort of first draft will be like making fun of a character. And then as the drafts go by, he's stepping back and he's being kinder and more forgiving and all these things.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that very much makes me think of that. Okay, so this is maybe the final question. I think you have a book club, I believe, called
Mhm.
Weird Girl Lit.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of about that name, that category of lit, and how you see yourself fitting into it, because all of your worlds are different from our own, although some of them can be seen in realist, parts yes, part no. I think about the third story, the girl who is like becoming a woman. It's sort of like Hunger Games vibes,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh, and she's like, she's still like reckoning with career choices. She's like visiting a dad who could be in a rehab or a jail or whatever. So, it's those kinds of elements that feel very real. But what is the benefit for you, including these different worlds? Is it just more fun? For me, like that sort of disorientation forces you to pay more attention to the text, immerse yourself more in the story. I wonder if that's how you see it, but yeah, reading those kinds of works, writing those kinds of works, what is it that you have in mind?
I don't know. I think it's just like a really it gives me a doorway to like understanding like really messy things. And I think with Heads, so Heads, this girl lives in this like post-apocalyptic world where there's like
Yes.
no
Yeah.
prisons,
That's,
peace, but there's this like monster hunting and killing the neighborhood pets.
yeah.
Her parent is in this like rehab that is like what they have rethought of as jail. And I think that that was just a way of me like I was like, how do I think about abolition, and how do I explore it? What if this, how do I explore someone not being the worst thing that they've ever done? And what if this girl, what if like something supernatural was happening? And what if this girl like so badly wants to believe that the person she loves wasn't capable of this? And she's like, actually, it was a monster. Um, and I think that's really human of us. And I think when we think of like different ways the world can be, different ways the world can function, it can be useful to see how like, you know, it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be follies because we're people. um and yeah, I think that is the, that's the main function for me. I just want to, I don't know, I'm just like playing around in different places. And I think in like the vein of like Octavia Butler and Ursula K Le Guin, who I think really explored um different worlds like the best. It's all about like the, it's like with Ursula K Le Guin and like the dispossessed, there's this like anarchist world, but it's still, it like sucks a little bit. But everyone is, it's just like it's just like a thought experiment. Like what if there was a world without capitalism? What would be strange to them? And then Octavia Butler is all about like, what are these like hard choices people are going to have to make to survive? I love that. I love thinking about those difficulties. I think like women are especially good at it. My cat has made an appearance in the back. Women, I think, are especially good at it because they have to make a choice of like being, you know, they're like fighting against a biological clock and being like, do I want to be a mom? Do I want to have a career? Um, like they're torn between all of these different realities and worlds. And I think I want to follow in the footsteps of people who are exploring what it means to do that.
that's a really great way of putting it. Yeah, that sort of answer that like, well, how are you gonna, you can't explore a world without capitalism, without creating a different world. You can't, you know, how are you gonna write a short story about abolition without, you know what I mean? So it's almost the questions are just so big that they have to be brought into an entirely different space.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. And welcome to your cat, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I saw him or her squirming around.
Yeah.
Very, very cute. Yeah, okay. So that's all I have for today. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Love this book. It's out September. What's the exact date on it?
September 2nd.
September 2nd. So go get this book at your local bookstore, independent bookstore. Beyond All Reasonable Doubt, Jesus is Alive. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much, Alex. This was so fun. Thank you for all your questions.